Hey everyone, welcome back. You ready for another deep dive?
Always ready. What are we exploring today?
Well, we're diving into this conversation with Adiman Bonsu, and
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Looks pretty interesting.
yeah, it's all about God and religion and, that whole search for meaning thing.
Big topic.
Definitely big. Like
Yeah.
that feeling we all get, right? That sense of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah, totally. That's been a part of humanity for as long as we've been around, I think.
For sure. So, in this deep dive, we'll uncover some really fascinating ideas about how different religions emerged.
Ooh, that's always a cool topic.
Right. And we'll also be exploring where Jesus fits into this whole picture.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious about that too. Like, how does he connect to all this?
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the first things that struck me in this conversation is how Ajiman presents this idea of God existing beyond religion.
Yeah, that's a pretty powerful concept, right? It kind of challenges our usual way of thinking about faith.
Absolutely. It's like
Oh.
we often see religion as the only way to reach God,
Yeah.
you know?
The rule book, the roadmap.
Right. But what if, and stay with me here, what if God is already present in everything,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere, like all the time?
Exactly. Azimon talks about this. It's like God's presence is woven into the fabric of life itself. But our human understanding.
Yeah, we need something to grasp onto.
Right. It's a huge concept to wrap our heads around.
Absolutely. So it makes sense that all these different religions emerged throughout history.
That
It's
makes
like
sense.
they provide us with a structure, a way to approach this idea of God that's just so vast and complex.
Yeah, it's like we need a language, right, to even begin to talk about these big ideas.
Totally.
Okay, but Azuman also talks about encountering other spiritual beings on this search for God.
Oh, yeah. Well, like angels and stuff?
Yeah, angels and also, well, beings that maybe aren't so benevolent.
Oh, okay. So not all sunshine and rainbows then.
Right. Is like there's this whole other realm, and some of these entities might be incredibly powerful, but
What?
not actually God.
Oh, wow. That's trippy. It is. And sometimes these beings might even present themselves as God.
Whoa. Okay, so it's like a cosmic game of who's the most powerful.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Ajiman points out that these encounters, these interactions, have actually shaped various religious paths.
Wait, really? So like sometimes it even leads people away from God?
Yeah, sometimes it can. It's like you're searching for something genuine, but you end up getting sidetracked.
That's wild. It really makes you think.
It does. Okay, so how does all this connect to Jesus? Well, Eigenman suggests that Jesus came with a really different perspective.
Different how?
Well, his focus was on internal connection. It's like instead of looking out there for God, Jesus was saying, hey, look within.
Interesting.
Right. And this is where the idea of the Holy Spirit comes in.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that, but I'm not sure I totally understand it.
Yeah, it can be a bit tricky. So think of it like this. The Holy Spirit is like a divine spark residing within each of us.
Okay, that makes more sense. So it's not about seeking God in temples or through rituals or whatever. It's about realizing God is already inside of us.
You got it. And that's a pretty radical shift from how many people view religion, don't you think?
For sure. It makes you think about those times when you just feel a sense of deep peace or knowing, right? Like a little voice of wisdom inside you. Could that be the Holy Spirit?
That's a great question. I mean, who knows for sure? But it's definitely something to ponder. Okay, so with that in mind, where does that leave us with Jesus's relationship to organized religion? Was he saying we should just reject it altogether?
That's a good question. It's interesting because, as Arguman points out, even today we see a lot of people who identify as Christian but don't really connect with organized churches.
They might say something like, I believe in God, but I wouldn't be caught dead in that church.
Ha ha ha. Yeah, exactly. So it really highlights this distinction, right? Between the spiritual essence of Christianity, that inner connection Jesus was talking about, and the institutions that have been built around it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's take stock for a second. We started with this whole idea of God existing beyond religion. Then we talk about those sometimes misleading encounters with other spiritual beings.
Or it's those tricky cosmic hikers.
Uh-huh, exactly. And then we explored how Jesus's message was all about finding God within ourselves. But where does that leave us with Christianity as we know it today, with all its rituals and traditions and, the whole organized religion thing?
It's a paradox, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you have pure Christianity, as Aguiman describes it, which focuses on that internal connection with the divine. But then on the other hand, like many faiths, it has developed all these rituals and practices and things we typically associate with religion.
Yeah, that makes you think, right? Because even if you don't consider yourself particularly religious, we all have our own
Oh,
rituals.
for sure.
Like maybe it's your morning coffee routine or a special family tradition, or even just the way you listen to this podcast every week.
Hey, we like that ritual.
Uh-huh. But you get the idea, right? These things give our lives structure and meaning.
Yeah, and I think Agamon was getting at something like that. He suggests that these elements, when approached with the right intention, can actually help us connect more deeply with that divine presence within. It's like the rituals aren't the goal in themselves. They're more like tools or reminders.
Reminders of what?
Reminders of the truth that Jesus revealed, that God is already within us.
I like that. Okay, so just to recap everything we've talked about today, we started with this amazing concept of God existing beyond any specific religion.
Right.
We discussed those sometimes confusing encounters with other spiritual beings.
Who might not always be who they seem.
Exactly. And we explored how Jesus' message emphasized this powerful idea of finding God within ourselves. And finally, we grappled with this interesting tension between Christianity's focus on internal connection and its external expression through religious practices.
Phew, that's a lot to cover.
I know, right? But it's some really thought-provoking stuff. And you know what? It leaves us with a pretty big question. If different spiritual entities have shaped the development of various religions throughout history,
How can we possibly know which paths are truly leading us closer to God?
right, and which ones resonate with that inner truth that Jesus spoke about?
That's a question for all of us to explore on our own spiritual journeys.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.